create dangerously. And this is from a quote from Albert Camus from 1957, like just literally 2 weeks after he won the Nobel Prize. He was giving a talk at a Swedish university, and he talked about to create today is to create dangerously. And of course, he was referring to those times. And uh, I it stuck with me, and I was like, it totally applies to today as well. And with today, I mean that as with every 5 6 years, there is a whole hype cycle of like, oh, there's AI today, and then back 5 6 years there was, oh, there's IoT and there's wearables, and there's uh, 10 years, 15 years ago there was something else, and but at the same time there's so many motions and movements going on around the world, and uh, there is at the same time I think there's so much power in that quote, right? It's about completely opening yourself up, and sort of manifesting your existence and essentially creating dangerously. And Albert Camus essentially was born in Algeria, lived most of his life in Algeria before moving to France, and then creating some of his best work in France, and then sadly leaving the world at a young age of 43, 40, 40, 45 in a car accident. Um, and that sort of always reminds me of like, time is short and we need to create as much as we can in that short time. So um, my life, just to give a short intro of my life, has also been sort of like up and down and like always crazy in that sense. I was born in Nasik, which is in India, and I was born to a plumber. My dad is a blue collar worker. He's a plumber in Nasik. And I grew up around a lot of animals. So I had a monkey as a pet. I had like 8 cats and 6 dogs, and my dad had like a snake at a point. I got a pony as a gift on my 8th birthday. But it's again, we're not rich by any means. We're like essentially living in the middle of nowhere, blue collar family, uh, essentially living in the forest. Uh, Moved to Bombay to study computer science, learned all of that, but then I quickly lost interest in structured education. And I really started learning on the go, like through working on projects. And then sort of like really picked up design and picked up creativity as like a way to express myself. Uh, Moved through Asia a lot. So moved to Singapore a couple of years, lived in Cambodia for a year, lived in Tokyo, moved as researcher. Cambodia made toys, fell in love with someone, so as a romantic, moved to London. Uh, was a poet there, failed miserably as a poet. Uh, then moved to Cambridge at MIT, was a scientist at MIT, invented a couple of things there, had some of the best times there, um, and was sort of set on becoming an academic at MIT, sort of on the path to be a professor at MIT. I mean, this is Cambridge, Massachusetts, by the way. I think people confuse Cambridge as Cambridge, UK, but it's Cambridge, Massachusetts. I mean, this was like 11 years ago when I came to America. And uh, in one of the summers, I sort of left to Arabia because I met a geologist, and I was like, I'm gonna sort of like move there. And then my professor thought this guy is gone; he's not coming back. Eventually, came back after 2 months. So that was a short stint. Yeah, moved to Seattle. Went to industry after realizing that I didn't want to like spend my life becoming an academic. Went to the industry, and if you know this thing called Alexa, that was my team. So I basically ran a lab in Amazon called the C Lab, which is a concept lab, which is essentially sort of a moonshot lab, a future lab, which takes like ideas from complete scratch and sort of like taking them to market. So my team basically came up with Alexa Look, and like shipped to market. So did that a couple of years, and then realized that don't like. Also, I don't like working for a company which is just putting things to sell people more stuff. um, so moved to New York, got an artist in residency at a new museum. Um, so moved to New York to become an artist, and then spent 2 years doing artist in residencies. And then eventually realized that the artist life, the structured artist life in the modern age, is a life of essentially rich people and essentially working for the curators, working for galleries, which is also not what I want to do. So the last 5 6 years, I essentially realized that what I wanted to do was I just wanted to always run my own lab, which is a mix of science, which is MIT, what I used to do, which is my skills, um, and Amazon and like industry, which is like doing things at scale, and the museum, which is like sort of the idea of design and creativity. So last 6 7 years, I've been running my own private lab called Odd Industries, um, which is this in New York City. And very amazingly, we were able to get this place, which is in the middle of this amazingly new building and this very old, dingy building. So it's like half and half between these two, and that's essentially what I love about our lab. So I started Out Industries in 2017 in New York City, and I run this lab, which is sort of a futurist lab, which is sort of you can imagine like MIT meets Amazon meets an art sort of a art museum. Um, so that's enough about me. I usually don't talk so much about myself, but that's basically been my journey over the years. Have given TED talks, was in the Forbes list twice, and recently got was a finalist for the National Design Award, which is like sort of the Nobel Prize for design because there's no Nobel Prize for design. So that's given by the Smithsonian. Um, Coming back and so yeah, so that's what I am, which is in service of invention and creativity to bring meaningful change in the world, creating dangerously. Back to Camus. So um, you know, COVID was for all of us a time of reflection and a time of peace and a time of chaos, and all of the things in between, right? And one of the big things it did for me was it gave me time to reflect on sort of my process, and it gave me time to reflect on sort of is there an order, is there a process to the madness, is there a process to how things have worked in the past for me, and almost sort of like a if I had to write a note to myself, to my future self, what would I write, right? And that's how this whole process started. And what I realized was this, that it's not about the tools, it's not about the science, it's not about the skills. It's really not. That is just incidental. Like, I could totally be a poet, which I was, and I am. I could totally be a plumber, which I was trained as by my father, which I still am a bad plumber. Um, I could totally, not be coding at all, which I don't code anymore. But I think what it is about human empathy, which I think all of us have. It's about really just about the human tools we all carry in ourselves. So, what I want to share with you today is two things. One is this framework, which consists of two things: the process and tools. And the process is super simple. It just love, see, do, repeat. And we'll come back to this later. What I mean by this, but is okay. So love is essentially having the creative mindset, having the mindset of um, being essentially always open to experiences, um, being always open to the world. Seeing is always sort of like seeing through the lens of the tools, seeing the world through the lens of these tools. Doing is always having a process for whatever your skills are, right? Whatever your medium is. You might be a writer, you might be a painter, you might be a programmer, you might be an activist, you might be, a pilot, you might be a driver, it could be anyone. Like the point is to be always putting things out, because um, it's uh, it's about like having it and then seeing it and then like also putting it out there, right? It's about doing things, and then the whole idea is about repeating it. It's about having a constant process of repeating it. So really, the framework is super simple, the process is super simple. um, it's really just love, see, do, repeat. There's nothing really complicated here. I don't believe in complicated things. It's super simple. Love, see, do, repeat. What I want to go through next, and what I want you to do is this. As I go through the next thing, the next part of it, which is tools, I'm going to share with you some of these tools with a case study with each of these tools. What I want you to do is just take a note of some of these tools which you like, your favorite tools. Um, like for example, one of these tools is humor. Another tool is family. Um, just take a note of it, maybe with the paper, maybe on your phone, maybe on your laptop, maybe just like remember it. And later when we have an open session Q&A, just sort of let's talk about it, let's talk about like which one are your favorite ones. And also what I want you to do is in the next week, because I don't want this to end this right now in the next, half an hour we have. What I want you to do is as an experiment, like the next week, I want you to just sort of take this with you for the next week. And as you go about your week, um, use two of these tools, three of these tools, whichever ones are your favorite, and just go about your week and sort of like use them to see which ones spark imagination, which ones help you to see the world differently, which ones help you to come up with a new idea. And maybe just shoot me an email and tell me how it went. Uh, so yeah, so I want to just like go through some of these tools, give you a little example from some of my past of how it helped me create something, just to make it more clear. But I want to focus more on the tool and like just take that as an example of like how that would apply to your life as well. So the first one is humor, and so this was sort of one of the first things I created, and this was like about like 17, 18 years ago, and I was uh, a very young, like like I think I was like 16 or something, and I was like very um, uh, pissed off at like in Asia back then there was like uh, a lot of uh, uh, even for the smallest things like the traffic light or others, there would be like a lot of bribery. People, the traffic cop would ask you for like $5 or $10 to like uh, to cross the light if you're like slightly ahead of the crosswalk. Uh, and me and my friends got like, oh, what if we just like, and that was just like a very uh, a thing in the whole system. And it was just like everyone accepted it as it is, right? So we just made fun of it one day as like, hey, what if we sort of like created a Yelp for bribery, uh, which is like, uh, what if we just like, had like a thing where people just like rate their experiences like a 5 star to 1 star, where like, oh, I gave this cop, like $10, and like he really just like did my like like left me like sent me scot free, uh, like 5 stars, did an amazing job, or like oh, 1 star, this cop took like $100 from me and like still gave me a lot of trouble. Uh, which is total parody of the situation, right? Because like bribery is a very foundational, institutional thing. You can't solve it overnight. But then, like with humor, you could sort of like ease the situation among yourself. And we just sort of tried to do that between us. And then that led to us being like, okay, why not try it? And we actually, this is again like 2005, 2006. Okay. So this is like pre smartphone, pre iPhone. So we actually, people had like dumb Nokia phones then. So we actually built a website. Most people had like these text phones. So we built a text engine so people could like send these text messages to uh, give these ratings. And we ended up with like 500,000 users in like 3, 4 months. And then, of course, the thing got shut down. But the point being, the daily humor can help you find new ideas. Uh, the other tool of empathy is expression. Uh, this is a story of one of my close friends, uh, my close friend's nephew who had cerebral palsy. And used to spend a lot of my afternoons at their place, and I saw the nephews struggle with cerebral palsy, even in like basic expressions and how they expressed themselves for when they wanted food or when they wanted to reach out for even basic communication. And there were no tools available for any of this. There were no affordable things that they could find. So, as my thesis, I ended up like building this tool, which is essentially a tool for kids with cerebral palsy to sort of help them communicate, emotionally communicate their needs. But then at the same time, I realized, like, it's so difficult to manufacture this at an affordable point, at an affordable price point. So I ended up making, as you can see at the bottom, like a keyboard accessory for it. So you can just like plug into a computer and use it. And this is around when the iPad was launched in 2009. So I sort of made an iPad app. Another lesson I learned at this point is that documentation is important, because you can see the pictures are crappy. And like, it's something I learned much later in life, that you need to take good photographs. Um, I didn't really understand the importance of documentation until much later. Uh, but what I want you to focus on is the idea of expression. Much later, when I lived in Tokyo, I noticed how, with an aging population in Japan, there is a lot of people live alone. And I later built these robots, which are sort of, instead of like robots which are focused on automation and industry, these are robots which are about people being loving and kind to this robot. So this robot is furry, and it's sort of like your buddy which talks to you and like it takes care of you. Um, so the idea of all of this came from this tool of how can we create expression? How can we help people express themselves more? Uh, Another tool for creativity is play. Uh, and play in this case, as an example, this is when I lived in Cambodia. And in Phnom Penh, I lived very close to a e-waste landfill. And this is an e-waste landfill where a lot of keyboards, mouse, speakers, which are dumped from Japan, Australia, mostly developed nations in Southeast Asia, so Singapore, Hong Kong, get dumped in Cambodia. And a lot of families have migrated from villages to Phnom Penh to extract small, valuable metals from these chips. And kids don't go to school. They work in these e-waste landfills to also extract these metals. And the kids were playing in this e-waste landfill. So that was sort of like watching them sort of play every day. I was like, what if I create like these uh, toys? What if I create toys from trash? What if I create educational toys from e-waste? So this is an example of what you see, the matchbox size box. That matchbox size box is something you carry in your pocket, and you can take it out and you connect a keyboard, e-waste keyboard, thrown out keyboard, because keyboards are generally difficult to brush. They're difficult to destroy. Um, you connect this keyboard and the keyboard becomes a piano. So it starts playing music. This is a keyboard which you connect and it starts asking you math questions. No kid ever likes this toy. Uh, this is a speaker or a headphone which you connect to your toy, and it tells you stories. So I created these sort of toys from trash called Thinker Toys, which then led to an NGO called Open Toys. Uh, and all of this was from a sense of play, which is, how could I create more play in daily life? And then later, of course, these toys became smaller and smaller. And this NGO had like a lot of educators, other engineers, designers to be part of it. Um, and like we said in our framework, right? So love, see, do, repeat. And these tools are the ones that are feeding into the C part. Okay. So uh, this is another tool, which is family, right? So having moved across so far, right, across these countries, as you can imagine, I left home when I was 16, uh, and my family still lives where I was born, so they never moved with me, and I'm the only child. Uh, so my dad is still a plumber. He still lives back there, and they're like these independent, headstrong people. They still are there, and I miss my family. You know, I miss my family everywhere I went. So to me, it was like, how do I solve that? Like, how do I sort of like not miss my family? Because we all miss our families, you know. Um, so I wrote this. My way of addressing that, you know, my way of addressing that was like I wrote this emotional algorithm which sort of like understands the context of each word I write. So what you see on the top is essentially six basic human emotions: happiness, anger, sadness, surprise, disgust, fear, and visualizations for each. And then as an example, what you see at the bottom is like a text, and then bottom left and a visualization of that. What you see at the right is a flower. It's a synthetic flower. And what it does is it understands a text my mom sent me, and it understands the emotions in that text. And depending on my mom's text, the flower either blooms or droops. So if my mom sent a text that was like happy, it's like blooming. If my mom sent a text that was sad, it's like sad. So imagine now a sort of a bed of flowers, right? A garden of flowers where each flower represents an important person in my life, right? It's like my mom, my dad, my girlfriend Andy, who's like right here, right now, uh, my closest friends, and these are people who are most important in my life, and they are in different parts of the world. And even if they're far away, I can wake up and this is a garden next to me of flowers. And it's essentially each flower is connecting to my last conversation with them on the phone, on WhatsApp, on text. And just looking at the flower, I can just see which of my relationship needs some water, which of my relationship needs tending to. And that was my way of like sort of addressing how I can, you know, better uh, try to address my the fact that I miss my family. Oh, sorry, I had a moment there missing my family. This is another tool which is creating fantasies, right? Because all of us um, have read these amazing books. We grew up reading these amazing mythical books, these magical wonderlands, and these amazing movies we saw, um, and I believe that monsters exist and dragons exist, and I do believe that the real world of corporate and taxes and 401ks and IRS is just a mirage, and that's just the curtain. And I think that's just to fool us. And I think like if you draw the curtain, I think the real world has dragons and fairies. Uh, I 100% believe in that. Uh, so uh, when I was at MIT, I had access to a physics lab. And being a diehard Harry Potter fan, I always wanted an invisibility cloak. So one thing I started experimenting on was fiber optic invisibility. So this, as you can see on the left-hand side, is a nail. It's a hard nail, so it's a metal nail. And those are some fiber optics. And as you can see on the right-hand side is the same exact fiber optics with the nail in it, but now it is on the other side. And as you can see, you cannot see the nails inside of it because it's invisible, because the light has bended through the nail. So the nails inside is invisible. So you can now imagine if this was supersized to human body scale, and the nail was your body, and the fiber optic was a cloak you're wearing, your body would be invisible. Of course, modern physics still doesn't allow us to supersize this to human scale. That's why you can't still buy a invisibility cloak. But I was able to sort of at miniature scale prove that invisibility cloak for at least a metal nail can be made. Um, so yeah, I think like part of it is dragons and fairies exist, and you can you have to, I think you have to believe in that. And I think like fantasies exist, and you have to use that as a tool in your creative process. uh, and whatever, again, as I said, whatever you do, right, you could be a singer, you could be, and it doesn't matter what your day job is, right? Like who cares how you pay your bills? That doesn't matter. uh, what matters is that whatever your creative process is, whatever your way of expression is, you use these tools. In this case, the tool is being fantasy. If it was Willy Wonka, that's your fantasy, right? That's the world you want to exist in. And then that's the kind of lifestyle you want. That's the kind of like something that you want to create in your daily life. Then do it. No one's stopping you, to go and do that. Um, and then at the same time, get something from there that you can pull out into your reality and bring that as an inspiration into your paintings, into your product designs, into your poetry, into your singing, into your weaving, into your, whatever you're making, whatever it can be. Um, don't create fear. But what I mean by that is someone created fear in me. Uh, this was when I moved to Cambridge, and I was walking to my home, and I got robbed. This was like the first 2 weeks, first 2 months actually. I had moved to Cambridge, uh, and I was walking like late night from my lab, and really dark. And I got scared. I took a taxi back home in the next few days. And as you can see, I didn't have any muscles. I still don't have muscles. Uh, so I went to my lab, and what I do best is I went and created some synthetic muscles. Uh, so these are like perfectly foldable muscles which you can wear under your shirt. And as you can see here, this is again me before a mustache and much younger. So my left arm has muscles, my arm has no muscles. So these are synthetic muscles. So essentially, yeah. And then, of course, no one then robbed me. So I'm sure I created fear in other people. But what I mean by this is fear is also a tool, right? Like there are things that you are afraid of. There are things that have happened in your life that might be tragedies, that might be things that you're phobias of, things that have that I'm sorry that have happened to you, and that all of us um, uh, that have been unfortunate events, have been dark phases. I have had dark phases in my life, um, and it's only being human, it's part of being human. I've had to deal with depression in my life, like most of us have had. And I think it's only makes us a better human. I think it only adds a deeper layer to us. It only makes us more human. And I think going through that process um, reveals to us who we are, makes us more grounded. And I think it sort of also adds more authenticity to our work. Uh, it also, I guess, helps you burn your friend's hair. So this was, I was always, I always have bad hair days. Uh, So I wanted to make programmable hair, where you could just snap a picture and your hair basically just moves around, and you can like um, get the hair you want. So you can like snap a picture from a magazine, and your hair moves accordingly. So this is my friend Hayato, and I started experimenting with programmable hair. And sadly, the circuit caught on fire. My friend lost some hair. I lost a friend, but that was not the end of it. um, another part of another tool being learning, right? So the things you always want to learn. I always wanted to learn some music. Andy, my girlfriend here, Andrea, she's a music composer. She's a world famous music composer. Uh, but I cannot play music to save my life, and I always wanted to learn music. So this is something about like 14 years ago I made, which is essentially an apparatus you wear on your wrist, which essentially gives sort of like transducers on your fingers, which give you an illusion of push or pull. And what happens is you can essentially pick up a ukulele and hold it, and um, it'll essentially, you can download a song onto your hand. So imagine you can download a song you want to play onto your hand and then pick up a ukulele, and then your fingers get pulled or pushed, nudged, not essentially artificially pulled, but like nudged to the right chord position. So you can play without knowing how to play. So you might, of course, be like, oh, what's the point in learning, right? So the way it does is it first teaches you, then it only corrects you as you get better. And then as you get really better, it'll actually misguide you so you can explore. And I think that's how it should be, right? Uh, the other thing is childhood, right? Like we all, I don't think people should grow up. I think we are still children hidden in an adult body. So part of it is also like creating childhood. This was me in Nasik in India. I had long hair. My parents couldn't afford finding a barber, and I don't know why they didn't just cut my hair themselves. But I just had long hair as a kid. Uh, so my parents, like I said, we lived in a zoo essentially because they just loved animals and lived in the forest. And I used to always just walk barefoot. I think I had my first footwear like much later in life, and because we were not living in a village or a city, there were no maps, there were no roads, there were no streets, there were no like it was just like walk anywhere you want. Um, and later, when I moved to all these big cities, right, there was always these roads and streets. So later in life, I made these shoes called super shoes, which sort of the idea was like, how can I bring back this sense of wonder and exploration in the cities I lived? So these are like insoles, which sort of like tickle your feet, and you can like put them in any shoe you wear, and any shoe becomes a super shoe. Um, so the idea is like they're foldable and they're sting proof. I know we are sort of like running out of time. Someone sort of like move slow, like slightly faster, uh, and you can put them in any shoe, and they work on a tickling interface. So if the right feet tickle, take a right turn. Left feet tickle, take a left turn. No tickle, keep going. All tickles, stop. Um, and they know what you like, what's your personality, are you you know what kind of food you like, music you like. They know where you are, your calendar, so on and so forth. So of course the first thing I did was navigation, right? So the idea is that you don't look at your phone when you're going from A to B. The idea is you keep your phone in your pocket, and the shoes tickle you, and you enjoy the city. You look up, you don't look at your phone, and you just walk and you enjoy and you go. And then I was like, wait, it always suggests you the same route. But the thing is, the city is a grid. You can always, if you have more time, if you're not running late, why not take different routes? Why take the same route? So I basically programmed it. If you're not running late, if you have more time, and if you're not busy, it suggests you different routes to take. So you can now explore alleys that you have not taken before. The other thing it does is if you're in a new city, like for example, Maddie's in London or in England. Uh, and say if I'm in London, I used to live in London and in Angel like for 6 months. And uh, if I'm in London back and the shoes know that I love some fish and chips, the shoes will just tickle me and take me to a lovely fish and chips place. Or the shoes know that, I have to pick up laundry on my way back home. So they'll just like tickle me and help me to sort of like pick up laundry. And they also help you sort of get lost, and you can just tap your feet thrice and they help you take you back home. uh, the other thing being nature. Nature's all around us, and taking inspiration from nature. uh, as you know, there's so many different devices around us of different sizes, and I was like, they all do the same thing. They all do email, browser, same thing. Why am I carrying 5 devices? So I invented a new elastic screen, which is essentially an inspiration from a T-shirt, which is a T-shirt being stretchable, but essentially also from nature, which is fabric and elasticity. So this is a computer screen, which is essentially stretchable. Um, so you can imagine your data now being completely foldable, moldable, and stretchable. So you can, in this case, imagine a Google Maps where you can like pull out a mountain and you can like um, draw a river, expand a river, so on and so forth, pull out an entire land surface, so on and so forth. Um, this was about my mom. where my mom's aging, and um, I've been uh, she had to go through health issues, and she's 75 now, and that made me think about time, and like time being a quantity, right? We think about age but like as number, and we think about time as like 5 minutes and 10 minutes and 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock. But what time is essentially, it's a gradient of life and death. Time is about presence. So to walk through that, uh, I sort of made a wristwatch which runs on bacteria. So this is something that you wear on your hands, and it's essentially a wristwatch which has millions of bacteria on it, which change color with time. So in the morning they're blue, then green, then yellow as time goes. And it's not about telling time; it's about essentially uh, experiencing life and death of an organism on your hand. I'm gonna just skip through a lot of these. We can go on forever and ever. But yeah, this is about teleportation. This is about when I was in Arabia and made something for geologists. This is a social network for kids and it's about play. Uh, yeah, that's about nostalgia, about electric vehicles, about food. But these are all tools. This is about movements. This is something I started for like, yeah. Okay, this is the last one. It's about anarchy. Um, and this is not about technology. This is about when I was in college. I was like, uh, so another thing, uh, because my dad was a plumber. I didn't get admission in most of schools in my neighborhood, in my village, because in my when I was born, because um, my dad was essentially a low class plumber, essentially according to the society. Uh, so a lot of schools denied me admission. Uh, but then this like missionary Catholic school gave me admission. Uh, and that's but the thing is, they gave me admission and then they put me in a higher class because I was tall for my age. So I wasn't so I basically finished high school at 14, not because I was smart, but because I was tall. Anyway, so I ended up in college at 15, again, not because I was smart, but because I was tall. uh, so at 15 I was smoking cigarettes basically, and then I got caught smoking cigarettes. uh, and then I was made to clean up the whole campus. So as a rebellion, as a 15-year-old, what I did was I put like plant seeds in the butt of the cigarette. Um, and my whole thing was, as an anarchist, I was like, oh, so now when I smoke a cigarette and I'm smoking and I'm throwing the butt, I'm essentially planting a tree. So this is a video of like grass growing from like like 4 packs of cigarette butts or something. So it's like, oh, a smoker is making the world greener. But again, this is like 15-year-old foolish me. I don't smoke. I don't think. I mean, it's yeah, not good for health. But yes, anarchy also a tool for creativity. Don't smoke if you're not smoking. Uh, yes, love, see, do, repeat. Some lessons create lifelong collaborators, but first create. I think your creations attract people who will be your collaborators. Uh, Lifelong collaborators is important. It's not about a project. Most collaborators I have are people who I think about them as like, this is someone I want to work for 100 years, not for next 6 months. Create failures. 1, 10, 100 is how I think of it. You'll have 100 ideas, 10 of them will turn into projects. One of them is how much you have energy to execute. So think of 100 ideas, 10 will be projects, one you have time to execute. Um, More signal than noise. Uh, Tune out things because you have limited energy, and tune into things which are honest, which have clarity. Uh, there's a lot of noise in the world, really. Just tune into things that have signal. And don't create yourself. You're already authentic. You don't have to belong. You are here. You belong. You are one and only of your kind in the history of the universe and the future of the universe. You don't have to be anyone. You are yourself. Just be you. Uh, Please, the world needs you to create. And that's it. Sorry, I really just went off time. So yeah, let's do Q&A.
I will very quickly
Uh,
jump in and say that there is
yes,
no session directly after this. We have a little bit of a break. So
amazing,
while
amazing. Yeah,
people
yeah.
can come up with questions, if there is another one of the projects that you skipped over that you didn't want to skip over, that you want to go back to and say a little bit more about, you are more than welcome to do so. And it's okay if we run over a little bit.
Oh, I have 300 projects to talk about.
Maybe
I have
just
a,
one of
yeah, I have a
them.
15-year career. I can go about like talk about anything and everything. So I think more than me talking about work, I think I would love. And then again, if you Google me, you'll find like there are like talks, there are TED talks. There's like my website is probably outdated. It's going through a refresh. So the website's old. It should be refreshed in a month. This is a monthly newsletter. I'll drop the link. I know no one's. Please don't type this. I don't want you to type this. That's going to be sad. I'll paste a link on the in the chat box. It's a monthly newsletter I send out. It just some thoughts, insights, updates on work. There's no spam. I have nothing to sell you. I'm not selling you a book. I'm not selling a course. There's nothing I have to sell you. So it just things I write about as if I'm writing to a friend. Um, Apart from that, I think the best use of time would be if you just like open and ask questions. I think that would be the best instead of me sharing like three more projects. Okay, I'm just gonna send the link here. Oh, yeah, the newsletter. Uh, and okay, the other part being this is my email. What I want is that's my one request from this talk is office@dhairyadand.com. Okay, that's my email. So yeah, two things, two requests. Okay, so one request is let me stop share. Yeah. Okay, so two requests. One request is um, pick two of your favorite tools, maybe three of your favorite tools. Go through this week. Yeah, give it like 3 4 days for all of this to settle down. Go through this week with your experiences, with your life, with whatever you're up to, and try to see your world through these tools. See through this lens. Try to think of ideas through it, and yeah, just write to me as like what came out as an idea. Uh, yeah, I would love to hear from you. Second request is, yeah, if you want to sign up on the newsletter, do that. On my website, I also have like unoffice hours, which is again like there's a link to my Calendly, which is like I have like 2 hours every week, which are open for people to, if anyone wants to just like discuss about anything or needs feedback on their work or has questions about my work. Uh, I have 2 hours open every week where you can schedule a half an hour Zoom call with me. Again, it's free. I have nothing to sell you. I just like to meet new people, discuss, and it helps me be abreast with different people, and I love to connect with people and love to hear people's stories. So yeah, feel free to schedule an office hour and send me an email a week later. And I'm going to shut up now and hear from all of you amazing people.
Feel free to unmute or type questions in the chat. I can kick things off potentially. I was going to ask about your designing a creative space. So you've built these labs. You've even your home. Like, how do you design an environment for you to be in that stimulates your creative juices to flow?
Yeah, that's a good question. So environment, right? Environment is a multi layered one, right? Um, I can address this in three layers, right? Like I think of environment as three layered, right? There's an internal environment, there's a home environment, there's a work environment, and there's a fourth place. So it's like first place, second place, third place, fourth place. Fourth place is First place is the internal environment, right? Uh, I can tell you what works for me. What works for me is exercise. works for me, which is it's not about looking good, it's about feeling good. It's not about how much exercise I do, it's about just doing something. Uh, uh, it's just about just being some activities every day. It's not also about just like having time out. It's just about like, uh, and I can't stress this enough. I know this is not the answer you're expecting as like, oh, this is not about creativity. Why is he talking about exercise? But I cannot tell you how much that changes everything, because the days I do not, I am like I'm complacent, and like that are just like I'm just like that, and I can't tell you how much that changes everything. Like really, just like health, diet, like that is central to creativity. I can't tell you how much. Because if your body is not with you, it's hard. It's hard to be creative. Um, uh, the other one I know is counterintuitive, but it's discipline. Really, it's discipline, because uh, I was very undisciplined early in my life. Which what I mean by that is, I was the person who would show up, an hour late to a meeting. I was the person who you couldn't count on to show up to work that day. Uh, I was a person who, didn't have a calendar. I had a person with a messy desk. I was a person who, all of that, very typical what you think of a creative person, right? Like chaotic life, chaotic desk, don't know where he is, don't know which part of the world he is at. Today he's in France, tomorrow he's in Japan, who knows where he is. I was that guy. Uh, don't know where my passport is, like that's basically who I was. Uh, and I regret that, because that really made me lose a lot of time. Uh, and now I'm disciplined like to the T. And discipline has made me the most creative person ever. Because what it has done is it has allowed me to focus on um being completely not worry about the mundane stuff. I can delegate all the mundane stuff, and I can focus on the stuff that actually matters. Uh, so it takes a bit of work. It was not easy to go from like completely undisciplined to discipline. That's really hard to start. But if you do that, if you're able to do that, and it's step by step, it's not one day, it's not overnight. It took me 2 months. It took me 2 3 months to sort of like start a system. And again, there is no right system. Everyone has a different system. For example, I'll show you. My system is a diary. I'm still an analog person. Like I can't do digital. The only thing digital that works with me is calendars, because everyone is on calendar, and it's like I need notification and all of that. So of course I have a phone and all of that, but like everything to me is a diary. Like I still write things. I still carry a diary with me. For you, a diary is probably useless. For you, maybe you need to have Notion, you need to have all of those things. So what I'm saying is that find your thing. Don't follow because you read it in a book, or because some productivity guru said something. Don't follow that. I think that's not the way to go. Try things, try 5 things, see which works, see which sticks. um, yes, so discipline really helps you become the most creative you. uh, uh, yes, everything else frankly is superficial. uh, Everything else you see, which is like, oh, what dress you're wearing, um, are you carrying a moleskin diary, or like which pen you use, or like which brand diary you use, are you using a MacBook, are you using Windows laptops? It's all superficial. No one gives it, no one cares. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter at all. Are you wearing Lululemon yoga pants, or are you wearing Amazon yoga pants? Doesn't matter. Um, do you have a studio workspace, a dedicated studio workspace? Are you working out of your barn, or are you working out of the library? Doesn't matter. uh, yeah, those things I don't think they matter at all. I've done all of those three. I've worked out of a library. uh, I have my own lab where I have all the space in the world. uh, I've worked out of uh, like a friend's barn as well during COVID. uh, I also work out of my dining table when I'm home. So I don't think any of those things matter. Um, Yeah, I think end of the day, really, it's about like figuring out who you are, what works for you, and try different things, see which sticks. Uh, Take the best lessons from every self-help person out there, but don't really subscribe to any one person because you are unique. And don't try to be someone else. Don't try to imitate someone else because they're probably trying to sell you something. And uh, yeah, don't buy don't buy from anyone. Uh, yeah, I don't know their answers.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you've developed so many solutions to problems. Do you work, do you approach these solutions through like a result, any type of result threshold? Are you approaching, are you driven by results? Is there a threshold there that you work through?
Yeah. So um, it has been different at different times, right? So uh, earlier in my life, when I was in institutions, right? Like for example, when I was um, at MIT, uh, the result threshold was the expectation of the result was set by the institution, which was, oh, our expectation is that you publish world-class academic research, which means you need to discover some new phenomena, which means you need to like hence publish new academic peer-reviewed research, right? Then when I was at Amazon, the result threshold there is, oh, we need to design products which actually end up in the market, which solve a real customer need, which need to be at a certain price point, which need to, also uh, be sit in the larger product category, which need to serve the larger company's needs, so on and so forth. uh, when I was doing an art residency in the museum, the result threshold is more of like, oh, you submit an artist statement, which is about what is your art vision, and at the same time, there's an expectation that you will be doing an exhibition at the museum. So it has to meet a certain um, artistic quality, a certain standard of this is going to be exhibited to world class curators and peers, so it has to meet a standard of that. And then last 7 years, when I now run my own lab, I get to set my own result threshold, which is even harder, right? Because there is a set of it's my own investment in that. Uh, and with that, having said that, what I have where I find my space in is sort of um, the trifecta of those three. And something that Dustin said earlier, right, which is like, oh, it's not exactly problem solution. It's sort of like creating something in the future. And that's where I'm sort of like, so my thinking is more around that, which is uh, the world has enough people who are creating apps and creating product solution and like product market fit that I think, again, this is my assumption, right? Like I might be totally wrong. Like someone might prove me wrong on this, and I want someone to prove me wrong. Uh, I think that the world needs and can afford few people uh, slightly going out and doing something that's not solving today's problems. It's like, in the 15th century when like in Europe, when there was a whole new land which is not discovered, which is America right now here. Uh, there were a lot of people who were like in the mainland doing trade, and like 99%, 99.99% people were actually doing inland, mainland European trade. And like 0.0001% people, we could afford that amount of people going and trying something different. As a civilization, as a society, we can afford some people doing something out there, which might not yield results today, but we can afford doing that as a society. And that's my thought process. So the result threshold for that essentially isn't through, so I'm not measuring myself through, oh, is there a product in the market with this? The result threshold for that is, it's 5 years out product. So is this leading to, um, is that leading to some new ideas? Is that leading to some companies adopting this as new product lines? So, for example, some of these are going to get licensed into companies as ideas, as new product innovation. So, for example, um, the the elastic screen, the one that you saw, I think I skipped over that, but the one which is about nature, which is about like uh, sort of pulling your data out, that's being licensed by a car company, where right now you have the car dashboards, right? And all the car dashboards are like these plastic molded dashboards. Um, and right now, most cars are moving towards this like 17-inch screen, which is like this one screen, which is just like a flat screen. And that has no physical buttons, which is also weird because like you're driving and then there's like a screen that you have to touch, and like that's like there's no tangible way to like change things over there. But instead, what if your dashboard was essentially this elastic, um, morphable dashboard, which you can pull and push and sort of like create a button as you please wherever you want. So that's being licensed out by a car manufacturer. So the whole dashboard is sort of like this natural elastic, sort of like an elastic material like your shirt. So that's my sort of result threshold, which is none of these are intended to be launched by me as products in the market, because that's not where I want to spend my time in. The intention is I get to be upstream at invention, closer to invention, and then these get either licensed out to companies who have the capacity better than me to take it to market 2 years out there, or some of them go out to museums as art projects, or as education to sort of like inspire people or to create new thoughts, create new ideas. Yeah, so the result threshold is to create change, to yeah, that's basically the result threshold. I don't know if
I have
that
one
answers
more
the
question.
question.
How about, yeah, no, I have one more question. How about as a
Yeah,
form?
yes, please. Sorry.
As a form, I understand the end result, the
Yes,
product,
yes,
the end
yes, yes,
result
yes.
is to develop, but
Yeah.
as a form, where, and this may go too deep, and if you don't want to cover this, that's fine, because these are your secrets. I get it. You're developing a lot of things, but as far as, and you're finding so many forms. This, I mean, if you think about, in some ways, the best way I think I put it right now is a theory of forms. You have these forms. So where, I don't even, I feel bad even asking, but
No. Good one. Yeah.
where are you? Yeah, you're pushed through different, organizations to develop, but where, I think threshold, I meant threshold, I think maybe a little differently. Where's the threshold for generating these forms? Because these are all your forms based on the massive honesty that you have with your existence. These are your forms. Where, I mean, how are you generating? I don't even want to ask you that, because this is yours. But I mean, can you talk about, your how these form, how you form, because there's so many, man. You even said you have 300. I mean, I the things that you create, I mean, it's on a massive, interesting scale. So where are these
Uh,
forms? How do you approach your existence in life that gains you access to so many forms consistently? Through brutal honesty with your existence and being,
yeah.
really.
Yeah. So if I understand it correctly, Salvatore, is it Salvatore or Salvatore?
Salvatore.
Salvatore, lovely. I love
Salvatore's
that
fine.
name. Yes, it's a lovely name. If I understand it correctly, the question, is it about like why do you create, or where do you find the inspiration to create, or how are you creating these things, or like um, how are you creating so many things, or is that the question, or is it the financial question of how is the infrastructure behind, or is it the financial question of how did it start, and how are you sort of funding all of this, or is it the financial question, is it the, or is it the personal, or is it both, the personal question of as a person, how are you finding the energy to sort of keep going?
Well, I think it's fascinating how much access you
And I'm,
have
I'm happy
to your
happy to answer both,
to your own.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
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 I mean, not even a question. I mean, just a matter
yeah.
of discussion. Well, I mean, how
Oh
do
yes,
you
yes,
have
yes, yes.
you have so much? I think it's fascinating how much access you have to creating creativity in your own mechanism, in your own instrument. You
Understood,
have
understood,
so
understood.
much access.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
It's a
I think
continual.
no, no, Salvador, thank you so much. That's a huge compliment. Thank you. Uh, I think so. So here's the thing, right? It has been uh, so of course it's a limited time here, right? So it's you only see the highlights, which also means that there have also been lowlights. You know, this is the highlights. There's also lowlights. Uh, so as much as you see here, there's also been the opposite. Um, so I think I really think so that uh, it's really about just keeping on going. You have to really just keep going, and whatever you do, uh, because I've had time when uh, amazing, because part of it is also right time, right place, undeniably, right? It's not, there was a time when I was young in my 20s when I was I am the reason all of this has happened. I was so cocky about it, where it was oh, I am a genius, it has happened because of me. And now when I'm much older, I realize that it was not all me. It was also because I was uh, lucky in some times where the way fate works, the way some things happen, that uh, uh, you are also in the right place, right time sometimes, right? And then there's something to honor about the way the world works sometimes. And it's not always about you sometimes, right? And in that fashion, it has also happened that I've had times in my life where I've worked with the same energy, right? Um, I've given the same amount of my attention. I've given the same amount of energy to a project, and nothing has come out of it, right? No one has responded to me. Nothing has come out of it. Uh, if I've shown you 300 projects, there are you know, if I've shown you 30 projects, there are whatever 100 more, 200 more, which have not seen the light of the day, which are I'm probably more proud of, or probably have spent more money on, and they're just failures. Uh, and they just exist, but they're just not out there. So it has been a tough journey in that sense, right? And uh, I think uh, it has been dark phases. It has been also full of depression, right? As every human has been. Uh, so, which is also why I quote Camus, right? Because Camus also went through all these dark phases in his life. Uh, so I think, uh, and the same with also logistical and operational. For example, when I started Audit Industries, right? Uh, I started it with essentially coming out of Amazon, launching Alexa and all of that, right? I started it with all of that, and I put in all that I came out with, all the tech money that I came in with, right? I put all of that money into this, and I launched some projects. I started designing a bioreactive architecture building in Slovenia, which I thought was going to revolutionize the world. It was essentially an architecture building, which was essentially a building made out of bioreactive bacteria, uh, but it failed miserably. That was my entire life savings went into that. Uh, and then I thought my next project was a CubeSat. I was going to launch a satellite, which was essentially a biosensor satellite. And I thought this is going to change everything again. And I took a whole debt for that. And then that failed miserably. So, uh, and then I basically came out of that and like again started the whole process again. And now I'm in a whole different phase where like things are again, like last 5 years, things are again in a whole different league. So it's like, what I'm saying is that these things will go up and down all the time, right? There are highlights, lowlights, and money will come and go. And I think that's totally fine. I think like these are all like, there is the curtain of things, there is the IRS and the 401ks, and there is the fairies and angels and dragons that are behind. So there is the front and the back of the world. And I think like we often get caught in the front of the world, I think, which is like the fame and the money and the uh, the power and the success and failures and my friends and recognition and like titles and lists and awards. Uh, and I think that's okay. But I think like very soon you realize that that doesn't really make you happy. Uh, and I was fortunate that I sort of like got a lot of the awards. Like I was on the Forbes list when I was 25. Uh, I got the I was the finalist for the National Design Award, which is like the Nobel Prize for design when I was like in my 30s. Uh, and in a way, I was fortunate because it kind of made me realize that it didn't make me happy. And these are things that you get when you're 50, 50 or 60. And it made me realize that I didn't I didn't have to wait till 60 to realize that I don't want to have to spend a whole life to win a Nobel Prize to realize that it didn't really mean anything. And what really meant in my life is just keep on doing work that really means something to me and not spend time on people, awards, fame, money, and all these other things. So I sort of started like, in UK, in the tube in London, there is a thing, right? Mind the gap. Uh, so that's what I do. I sort of mind the gap. I mind the gap between uh, the superficiality of the world and sort of the internal beauty of things and the external beauty of the world. Like Dostoevsky, Fyodor Dostoevsky is one of my favorite authors, said in his book, Beauty Will Save the World. Uh, and beauty as in the beauty in things, the beauty in thought, the beauty in objects, the beauty in people's thoughts, the beauty in ideas. And I strongly, vehemently believe in that. Uh, so that's what I believe in. Yeah. So I think beauty will save the world. Everything else is just noise.
Thank you.
Also, feel free to email anytime. Happy to continue this conversation.
Hi, Dhairya.
Hi.
So I just had a very, very brief question. So firstly, let me just tell you that you're a very affable speaker and your personality just really shines through when you talk. What I
Thank you.
wanted to ask you, you're welcome. What I wanted to ask you is, I know you made a joke of it and you said that you're a failed poet, but but I just wanted to know, have you ever used the tools that you listed to create poetry? That's it.
Oh, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. Uh, that's a good question. I don't think so. I should. I mean, I these days I've been using. Yesterday, oh my God, I should. I just posted that yesterday. I was sending some postcard. Andrea, my girlfriend, just got back. She's from Iceland. She just came back from visiting her family in Reykjavik, and She got back some postcards. Um, and I'm close to two other family members. One lives in Houston, and one is my nephew lives in Houston, 12-year-old, and my niece lives in Bombay. Uh, she's 18. So they are the two next generation that I'm close with. So I sent them both postcards that Andrea got from Iceland. And I like to write poetry, that's how I write postcards. So these days I'm like using ChatGPT to like sort of like mix my poetry and GPT poetry, and then create a hybrid poetry. Um, but what I did use, I forgot this actually. Now that you said that, I remembered it right now, which is I created, this is like 2010, 2011. This was like a way earlier, like sort of a very early. I should find that out. I should like dig this out somewhere in my old hard drive. Um, so um, this is the first time I went to a casino in Macau. Macau was this like the small island uh, uh, in Southeast Asia, mostly known for its casinos. So that was my first time I went to a casino, and I was like, wow. So I came back to Singapore, where I was sort of a scientist researcher. Uh, what I did was I was thinking of like, oh, can I create a slot machine for ideas? So what I did was I downloaded the entire US PTO, which is the US Science and Technology, the US Patent and Technology Office, USPTO. So the USPTO database is online, which is the database for all the patents that have been filed since the 18th century, right? So I essentially downloaded the whole database, and I essentially wrote an algorithm which would like ingest that entire patent database, and then sort of like take in those keywords, and essentially apply the slot machine logic to sort of the US patent database, and then you sort of like press a button, and then it sort of like creates a new patent out of like nowhere, out of like all those patents. So imagine a very primitive chat GPT, but like for a patent, which is like essentially trained on the millions of patents that have been applied. And you can just like ask it like, hey, create me a patent for a new invention, blah, blah, blah. And it would like create you a new patent based on all this trained data. And of course, this was like 10 years ago, so it was like really, really rudimentary. So what it created was not really like sensible patterns, but what it created was like more of like gibberish, which sounded more like poetry than patterns. So so I think like that was probably what I closest what I created, which was like poetry than with my tools. But thank you for reminding me of that. I'm gonna like try to find it out from my old hard drives.
Maybe you'll try something new and you get to know about it.
Yeah, who knows? Thank you for that,
Dhairya.
though. Yeah.